I remember back in the town meeting days, I was working in southwestern Virginia, and I went to this town called Ivanhoe. And Ivanhoe was the most depressed looking town I think I had ever seen. There was no paint on any of the buildings. Half the things in town were sort of falling apart. There were no signs. It was trying to find anything was really difficult. We did finally find the post office, and we're talking to the postmaster, and we're offering this town meeting program. And he said, you know, he says, that sounds like a good idea. He says, tell you what. And he picks up the phone and he calls the fire chief, and he says, these folks want to hold a meeting, and I'm thinking that the firehouse would be a really good place to hold it. And what do you think? What's a good date for you? And the next thing you know, we have a date and a place. And then he says, now, if you could come back next week and bring some flyers, I'll make sure they get distributed all over town. And so we did. And the night of the town meeting, we came to town and we're eating our tuna fish sandwiches sitting by the side of the road, and a guy stops and he said, you guys okay? And we said, yeah, we're just a little bit early for the meeting down at the firehouse. He says, oops, he says, you're going to be late. They're having chicken dinner now. You better get over there real quick. And so we went, and here's this, maybe 75 or 80 people in this little bitty town having chicken dinner in the firehouse, and they showed me, I got the grand tour of the firehouse, and all their fire engines, which are secondhand engines that they bought from some other fire department. We held the town meeting. I had to do some real quick juggling in the middle of it, because it became obvious to me in the middle of the challenge workshop that half the people that were in the meeting were not very literate. They were having a great deal of difficulty writing things down. And so how to capture all that, you know, required some creativity. So then after, and I don't remember what the proposals were. I do not remember. I just remember this was just this wild meeting. Afterwards, they took me down and they told me about 3 weeks previous, the county had cut off the funding for their firehouse. So they drove all their fire trucks, all 8 of them, secondhand, barely could limp down the road. 8 fire trucks, they parked them 2 in front of this door, 2 in front of this door, 2 in front of this door, and 2 in front of this door of the courthouse on the square. Put a great big sign in the windshield that said, if you don't pay, you can have it. And went home. And the next day, this procession of fire trucks, they just left the keys in the fire truck. The procession of fire trucks drove into Ivanhoe with the check for the fire department. Well, about 10 years later, I met somebody from the Virginia Department of Community Development at an IAF meeting. It's an International Association of Facilitators meeting. And I just asked her, I said, do you know Ivanhoe? I said, I'm curious to know what's happening there. She said, you would not believe. She said, we don't know what happened. And I wouldn't take the total credit for this, because I think they were already on the road. But she says they have a line item in the state budget this year for community development. And so the next year or so, we drove through the town, and I almost didn't recognize it. They had a new firehouse, they had a new post office, they had a new school, the houses were painted, there were new businesses, they had an industrial park. It was amazing. But something had happened in that town that gave the people an idea that we can do it. And they were on the road. And whether the town meeting had anything to do with it or not, it might have and it might not, but something was right for a change.